Hey guys, welcome to another video from Historic Militaria. Today we're going to be looking at a pretty interesting gun. This is actually the first semi-automatic pistol that was adopted by a major military land power, and this is the model 1907 Roth-Steyr. It's also known as the Roth-Krinke, but most people call it the Roth-Steyr because Steyr made about 2/3 of the about 100,000 of these guns that were made. And again, this is a pretty strange gun. It was adopted by the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1907, and it was manufactured between 1908 and 1914. It fires a proprietary 8mm cartridge that was actually kind of underpowered for a gun of this size when you look at the 9mm Luger or the 7.63 broom handle round. It was kind of puny. And it's a pretty complicated gun, pretty difficult to field strip, certainly not in line with something like a Luger or a 1911, which was pretty contemporaneous with this gun. But again, it served the Austro-Hungarians well through World War I, and it was especially used by the Austrian cavalry. So the first interesting thing about this gun, without field stripping it, because this gun is actually in pretty nice shape, as you can tell, is the barrel is actually a rotating barrel inside. So when it recoils, this barrel will actually go back in the sleeve that it's in. And like a lot of Steyr designs, actually the barrel will rotate to keep it locked while the entire gun is recoiling. And then once it reaches the end of its rotation, that's when it will unlock, and then the breech will open up and eject your spent round and chamber your new round. This one also has this pin which sticks out from the back when the gun is cocked. That's a nice way of visually and by touch in the dark knowing your gun is cocked. The other interesting thing about this is it's got a very heavy trigger pull. It's meant to approximate a double action revolver firing from the uncocked position, and this was supposedly for cavalry use. Your cavalry trooper would have a little more safety when they were pulling the trigger. Really all it does is make that difficult to pull. I mean, this is actually putting a fair amount of pressure on the trigger, and as you can see, the gun is not going off. So you have to pull pretty hard, and that makes your gun go. Not really what you want in a semi-automatic pistol when you, again, compare it to even the guns at the time that were out there. Certainly the Luger had not yet been adopted by the German land army, but by 1908 it was, so you had the Luger to contend with, and a lot of other good stuff was waiting in the wings or already out. It's got some really nicely checkered wood grips, which really are commercial quality. The bluing is also pretty superb on these, just a lot of nice polish, nice finish, and they were either made by Steyr in Austria, or they were also made in Budapest by FEG. And FEG is still around, and they actually made guns well through the Hungarian communist period. So you might be familiar with like the SA-85, which was the Hungarian version of the AK-47 for civilian use for the American market. FEG made those, and they also made this gun in Budapest. The Budapest guns were about 38,000 were made in Budapest as compared to about 60,000 made by Austria. And these guns were pretty widely distributed during World War I. They also saw service after World War I with the Yugoslavs, and a number went to Italy as part of reparations. And the Italians actually did use them through World War II. Not that a lot of Italian handguns were that great during World War II. You certainly had like the Glicenti and some other questionable guns. Also on these, you're also going to see disc on the side here, and a lot of times that's going to have a unit mark. This one is actually blank. I don't believe this gun was ever actually issued, but a lot of times you'll have a unit mark on that because the Austro-Hungarian Empire was pretty good about unit marking their guns. Your serial number is going to be on the right side here, and this one's 21,000. And then when you look at the back of these, you're going to have a WN and a year. And as you can see, this one is a pre-World War I gun. I believe that's a WN12. That is an Austrian acceptance mark. So 1912, this gun was adopted, or this specific gun was adopted for use. So kind of gives you a little bit of a rundown on the 8mm Roth-Steyr. One last thing I will point out is your sort of absolutely non-existent sights here. You've got a little bit of a sight notch here, and then a really tiny front sight right here. So not exactly the best sight picture on these guns, but you know, they worked and they were used and they stuck around for quite some time. But not a gun that you see on the market, and certainly not one that was widely adopted by other people. I don't believe the cartridge actually saw much service with anybody else, so it wasn't a particularly popular cartridge, although I do know it is still made in small batches, I believe by Fiocchi, for commercial consumption. I'm not really sure why, but I guess there's enough people still shooting these to warrant that. But if you've got one of these, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. So like, subscribe, watch my other stuff, and always look out for new material. Thanks for watching.